Welcome. My name is D.H. Kim, and I will be the voice behind a series of videos composing Causal Beast, a primer on causal inference. Just in case anyone was curious, this is what I currently look like. And if you have any questions along the way about the course, feel free to reach out. I want to start the course with some reasons for why I think it's useful to learn causal inference. That way, you can quickly judge for yourself whether spending your time with me in this course would be a good use of your time. My pitch for why causal inference is useful to learn starts with the fact that we all hate uncertainty. Scientists have shown that we're neurologically wired to perceive anything uncertain as a potential threat. Thankfully, all of our brains are wired to attend to some well-studied cognitive methods in order to lessen some of the uncertainties in our lives. The first way we try to reduce uncertainty is by attending to the familiar. And one common way we do this is by choosing the most popular thing. For example, when choosing between phones, we choose among the most popular smartphones like the Samsung Galaxy or the Google Pixel, effectively reducing our uncertainty to just those two phones. Another way we attend to the familiar is by choosing the default. To continue the phone analogy, many of us keep our default phone settings because we're uncertain about what changing them might do to our phones. The second way we try to reduce uncertainty is by artificially creating meaning. The scary thing is we're not really intentional with this approach. It operates slightly under the radar of our consciousness through a psychological phenomenon called apophenia. You have apophenia if you've ever said something to which the response was, "That's a stretch." An example of apophenia occurring in our visual system is seeing intricate things in clouds like dolphins and platypus, or finding the silhouette of Jesus Christ in toasted bread. Our auditory system also commits to false interpretations. Sometimes we hear words in barks and meows. And in many other ways, without really meaning to, our minds create a lot of meaning from thin air to reduce uncertainty in our lives. The third way we try to reduce uncertainty is by rolling the dice and making a decision. Sometimes, we feel compelled to make up our minds, thereby preventing us from deliberating any longer. The reason? Relief. Immediate relief sets in when we decide on something, because we have by definition created certainty by committing to something, and we no longer have to wonder whether we made the right decision since it doesn't really matter anymore. Everything is off the table. What's done is done. The fourth and final way we reduce uncertainty is by using data, which is our most preferred way to deal with uncertainty, because we've always felt it in our hearts as rationalists that we can do better than just attending to the familiar, making stuff up, and rolling the dice. We prefer using data because data is information, particulars, which by definition are informative. And by informative, we mean they are able to reduce the uncertainties around our decisions. To be even more specific than acquiring information, I'd like you to consider acquiring causal information as the most preferred type of information to reduce uncertainties around our decisions. Why is that? Because causal information helps people understand why things happen, and therefore, make decisions which actually cause the effects that are desirable. It's intuitive that we want to make decisions which lead to desirable effects, but what do we actually mean by desirable effects? Here, we're not going to get into any deep philosophical discussion on what is desirable, or undesirable, to live a good life. Instead, we're going to rely on what society possesses for us, good rules of thumb, to gauge which effects are desirable and which are not. For example, an effect characterized by more health is better than less health. And there are countless more examples like more wealth is better than less wealth, more education is better than less education. And of course there are no divine statements regarding the desirability of these effects. But the societal rules of thumb are pretty practical and work well, and we're okay with that, which means that most of our efforts should be focused on what the causes of these well-established and desirable effects are. You might be wondering, who is actually uncovering the causes of these desirable effects? Simply put, social science researchers. It's always been the mission of social scientists to uncover causal knowledge that tackles societal uncertainties of this world like: does public health care improve health outcomes? Does a sugary drink tax reduce obesity? Are addiction clinics effective in accelerating recovery? Now admittedly, these are pretty broad-based questions whose answers have far-reaching effects, but might not be the type of evidence we're looking for to help reduce the uncertainty around our more immediate dilemmas, like whether our children should attend the private school or the public school. But you'd be surprised to know that there's actually a fair amount of research that comes incredibly timely to our everyday questions, including whether children gain much by wages from attending private school versus public school. All we have to do really is to make the diligent effort to search for our problems. I'll give you a personal example of this. About a year ago, My partner and I were wondering if one of us should move in with the other. What we both did was spend an entire month gathering causal knowledge from social science literature, to understand whether cohabitation before marriage decreased chances of separation. And this was important to us at the time because separation was an undesirable effect for the both of us, and we needed every bit of causal evidence to assure ourselves that we were making a well-reasoned decision. What I'm trying to explain with this example is that a lot of social science, of course, uncovers causal knowledge that is hugely impactful for its application to important policy issues like healthcare, foreign relations, and economic growth, but there's also a large part of social science that can be directly and immediately applicable to familiar problems we face at home. Causality is not something that should come to us as completely foreign. In our everyday language, there are phrases which denote causation like, "Why did this happen? What caused this to happen?" And there's plenty of verbs to supplement our causal vocabulary. Make, create, effect, force, lead. And that's actually precisely the problem, because causal phrases are used so ubiquitously without caution in their usage. It's common practice for papers to say, X predicts Y, when they mean X correlates with Y, but it misleads the majority of readers to read it as, X causes Y. And in hunger for information to reduce the uncertainty around our decisions, we may in haste consume information without consideration of whether the information denotes anything about causality. And that's the primary utility and goal of this class. To help you carefully read and digest information, and determine if the information has anything to say about causality, so that you may correctly use information as causal evidence with which to make decisions that lead to desirable effects.